get us started with our projects, I wanted to talk about the two main types of software that you're going to be using for the class. You can use any software you want in this class, or you can use cut and paste methods. You don't have to use software. You can literally cut out images and glue them onto paper or board. So it is up to you. But as you kind of get going in graphic design, it is to your advantage to definitely start using software because it'll just make your life so much easier. So to start us out, let's look at Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is what's called a bitmap software, and the reason it's called bitmap is because Adobe Photoshop documents are made up of these tiny dots of color called pixels. And Adobe Photoshop is really good for collaging photographs together. It's also great for creating things like digital paintings because pixels allow us to put so much information into this file. And I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can kind of see what a pixel is. If I get really close to this, I see these tiny dots of color, and that's what a pixel literally is. It's a dot of color. And the way it works is the higher the amount of these dots per inch in the document, the more crisp and clean and the bigger that you'll be able to print this and have it still look good. So the general rule is the higher the resolution, the better the file looks at a big size printed out. The lower the resolution, it'll start looking kind of pixelated, soft, blurry, kind of like what you see zoomed in here. So you need a decent resolution to print something. This is just basically a web photograph that I pulled off the web. And so the resolution is pretty small. And so you don't want to use this image if you want to print something out at high resolution. And just to kind of see what this resolution is, I'm going to go up to my image menu here and go to image size. And I'm going to look. So this actual photograph is only 147K. It's 284 by 177 pixels. That's how big it is literally. And the resolution is 72 pixels per inch at this size, 3 inches by 2 inches. If I make this document smaller or bigger, this resolution will change as long as I don't resample the image. So this would not look good printed out. But if this resolution were 300, then it would look decent when I printed it out at this size. So that's kind of how it works. When you start scanning, you really need to pay attention to resolution, or if you're taking digital photos, the best solution is to take high quality photographs, to scan in high quality images, and then you can always downsample them when you get to Photoshop. If you start out with small images like this, it becomes a lot more difficult because you really can't upsample. You can't make a small file bigger. It'll just look blurry and soft and it won't look very good. There are some specialized softwares that try and guesstimate and make the resolution work, but they generally aren't great. And so it's always better to start out with a big size file that you can downsample. Okay, so let's get going here. I have a couple of images. So for your collage project, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be finding images that communicate the design concept you've been given. So the design concept I'm going to illustrate today or design today is texture. So let's say I've been given the idea of texture. And I've done my research. I went online and I found a lot of different images that I think really communicate the idea of texture. And I have a good idea of what I want to do. I have a visual plan. I've kind of drawn it out. I've thought about it. And I'm going to now bring in my images and start to play with them and see what happens digitally. So the first thing I need to do is find another image because I just have one image here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my second image. I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to find it. It's just on my desktop, so I'm going to go down and I'm going to look for it. And here it is. It's just an image of a rock. And notice that it's a JPEG. So I'm going to click and open, and so it opens up, and I now have two images open. It might look like this. They might be actually tied together so that you need to click back and forth, but I have two images open in Photoshop. So I actually have two files open in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring that rock image into my wood image here. So I'm going to click on it, and sometimes it's really helpful to kind of pull it away. If you pull it away, it kind of disengages from this top bar, and then I can see both of them side by side. So I'm going to go to what's called the layers palette here. So the layers palette is where the stacks of pixels are visible. So every photograph you open in Photoshop starts out with one layer. If you then add things to it or you collage on top of it, you'll get more layers. And you can think of layers as sheets of paper that stack on top of each other. So if these were two photographs, when I bring them together, they're going to function like two sheets of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the layer and I'm going to drag it over to my wood image and I'm going to let it go. Now, an interesting thing happened. Part of the photograph kind of disappeared. And the reason that happened is because the rock image is actually bigger. It's a larger resolution than the wood image. So when I placed it into the wood image file, it's significantly bigger. So what I need to do is I actually need to transform it and downsample it and make it work with the wood image. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And to downsample an image, you go up to your edit menu. But actually, before I do that, I just want to look again at my layers. Now I have two layers here. I have my top layer, which is my rock image. And I still, if I close that one or turn it off, I still have my wood layer, my wood image underneath. So I have both images here in the same document. Just by dragging that layer over, I got them together. Okay, so now I need to scale this rock image. So I'm going to go up to my edit function here. I'm going to go down to transform and I'm going to choose scale. And then I can kind of just grab my mouse, grab onto the edge here, scale it. When I hit return, it's scaled. It kind of disappeared because it went off the edge, but I can go up to my move tool, which is at the top of your tools here, and I can kind of drag it up. And once I have it kind of scaled the size I want it, I can start to adjust it. So if you've downsampled it too much or you don't like what you've done with the downsampling, you can always go to Edit, Transform, Scale again, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I think I went a little too far. Okay, so you see that I have the two layers. One image is kind of moved over to the side here, and then I have my wood image underneath. So it doesn't look very good right now because what I actually want to do is I want just the rock to be visible. I want the background to disappear. So this is kind of how you collage in photograph. You take images, you place them in the same document, and then you cut or make portions of the image invisible or make it disappear, or you can make it semi-transparent, and then you can create a collage with the two images. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my layers palette, and there's a really great tool you can use. It's called the quick mask. And notice where my mouse is here. It's at the bottom of the screen, and it looks like a little rectangle with a hole in it, and it's called layer mask. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And when I click on that, notice that I get a mask here that I can start to cut out. But before I do that, actually, this will make it much easier for you. I'm going to give this something to mask. So I took my quick mask away just by kind of edit undo for a second. And I'm going to go up to my selection tools. So you have a couple of selection tools in Photoshop. You have what's called the lasso tool, which is just a freeform selection tool. You have a rectangular tool, which creates a selection in the shape of a rectangle. And then you have what's called the magic wand, which will select like pixels. So if I wanted to select just a blue sky or a green leaf, I would maybe use this tool. But if I want to try and freeform and draw, I would use my lasso tool. So I'm going to grab my lasso tool here, and I'm just going to kind of wing it to start. I'm going to just draw around this rock. And I'm just, my hand isn't the steadiest here, but I'm going to do my best because I know that the nice thing about this tool is I can actually edit this once I draw it out and make it look better. So I'm drawing around the rock and I'm going the whole way around it back to that initial starting point where I first started, and then I'm going to let go with my mouse and I get this selection. And the reason this is great is because now when I go and click on this quick mask or layer mask, the rock is now collaged into the image, but it's not perfect. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see it. I still have a little bit of that sky here. It's not that perfect. So I'm going to click on my layer mask and I'm going to go and grab my paintbrush tool here. And what you can do is when you paint with black, you can kind of take away the image or the edge and refine it and make it look better. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this paintbrush tool to kind of refine this, kind of go around it and make it look cleaner and better. Let's say I go too far. I accidentally do this and I erase part of my image. It's okay. All you need to do is go down to this this foreground color here, which is defaulting to black when I put the layer mask in, and I'm going to click it back to white, and white will actually bring back the image. So you can spend as much time as you want on this, kind of making it look perfect. I'm going to go back to black here, and I'm going to cut out this edge here, which I don't need in the image. And now I have it perfectly collaged, except I want to move it around a little. So I'm going to go and grab my move tool up here, and I can actually kind of move it around in the space, look at it, see what I think. So I'll move it around a little, kind of lay it out. And then I think I'm going to go ahead and add a third texture image here. So there's one on my desktop that might work. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to open up another image here. And the third image, let me just go down here, texture 1 JPEG. Okay, so I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to do this exact same thing I did before. I'm just going to go to this images layer. I'm going to drag it into my image that I have. And then what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to try and use transparency here to make it kind of look cool. The first thing I'll do is I'm going to pull it down so that it's below the rock. Notice I'm in my layers palette, and when you pull layers down, they either go on top or under each other. So you can take any layer and kind of pull it down and play with it and change the arrangement. So I'm going to put the rock on top, and I'm going to have this, I have this brick layer underneath. So notice that I'm also selecting layers. Whatever layer you're selected on is the layer that you're going to be able to manipulate. So I'm going to go to this brick layer here, and all I'm going to do for this, just really simple, is I'm going to lower the opacity and see what happens. Okay, and once I lower the opacity, okay, I'm getting somewhere. It doesn't look that great yet, but I'm going to keep tweaking it. But this is the idea. I've taken these texture images, I'm playing with them, I'm trying to communicate the idea of texture and do this with at least 3 or 4 images. And then once I feel good about the design, I'm going to save it and upload it to the discussion forum for other students to look at. And then on the due date, when the final collage is due, I'm going to update it. I'm going to upload it to my Dropbox. So I'm happy with this. Let's say, okay, this communicates texture. I like where it's going. I like what I've done. I'm going to go ahead and save it. So I'm going to go up to File. I'm going to go to Save, or you can go Save As, either way. So I'll go Save As because I'll type something new, and I'll put this name here, Collage 1. And I'll save it to my desktop. And now I have to decide what type of file I want to save it as. For the purposes of our class, I would like you to save things as either JPEGs, because they're easy for me to see and they're very universal, or you can save it as a PDF file. So you can do both of this here. There's a Photoshop PDF option, or there's the JPEG function. So either way, either of those two file formats will work. So I'll choose Photoshop PDF. The difference is a PDF is lossless, so I'm not going to lose any resolution. A JPEG, it is going to compress it a tiny bit. So I name it, I choose what type of file I want to save as, and then I click Save. It's been saved to my desktop here. I'm going to save it as a PDF, yes. Answer yes to everything. And then I'm ready to upload this to the D2L site, into the discussion, and let other students look at it. So that's kind of a quick tutorial. Remember that the texts and the teaching assistant texts are there every open lab for you, so that you can get support and help during open lab. I will also be there during my assigned hours, and I can help you as well. Or feel free to email me on D2L and tell me if you're having some problems. I'm sure we can coordinate a time for you to get some help. And the other great resource I really recommend is lynda.com. Lynda.com has all of these amazing tutorials. You need to get a subscription. It's lynda.com, and you can learn Photoshop and you can learn Illustrator and get help. But I will try and help you as we go along. For our first project, it's just finding the images, doing the collage, and uploading. You can either do this project digital or you can do it by hand, whatever works best for you.